were taking Africans from Elmina, trafficking them to Brazil, and enslaving them on the sugarcane plantations there. And in the 1500s, other Europeans started competing with the Portuguese on the shores of not only Ghana, but West Africa as a whole. The French, the Dutch, the British, they were all over the shores of West Africa, taking the human resource and also the natural resources. For this slave dungeons, it started as a very small slave fort. The Swedish, they were the first to build here on this land. In 1654, the Swedish built a slave fort, and they were trafficking Africans. But the fort and the land changed hands between 3 other European countries. Around 1658, the Danes captured the fort from the Swedish. The Danes were in control of the slave fort for 3 years. In the year 1661, the Dutch attacked the Danes, drove them away, and took control of the same slave fort. 4 years after the Dutch came here, in 1665, the British, for the Dutch, defeated them here. The British were the ones who developed the slave dungeon. So everything you see here, built by the British. But mind you, the British used enslaved Africans to build this up. It took them more than 100 years. And for close to 200 years, they trafficked a lot of Africans to the Americas, the Caribbean, enslaving them on the plantation farms. And the Africans taken through the slave dungeons, there were many captured within present-day Ghana. But in those days, there were Africans captured in neighboring West African countries like Togo, Burkina Faso, and brought here. And many were captives of wars that happened between the different kingdoms. The Europeans were supplying some African kingdoms with guns and gunpowder. And in those days, with the guns, your army or your kingdom becomes more powerful. But the Europeans wanted something in exchange, and that was the captives of the wars that happened. Mind you, there were many times the Europeans themselves instigated conflicts among the kingdoms. Because the more conflict or wars, the more they get to have the captives to traffic. There were also a lot of Africans who were kidnapped randomly from their homes and villages by slave raiders. And wherever the Africans were captured, they were marched on foot. They walked here. So you can imagine, even a bus ride from Accra here is a long journey. So just imagine walking from even Accra, not to talk about Burkina, which is over 800 kilometers from here. So there were a lot of African captives who died being marched to the slave dungeons. The middlemen and slave raiders who were bringing the African captives, they bring them to auction them to the British. And the trading system was the barter trade. The British were using the guns, textiles, and other European commodities to barter or to exchange.